Well, hey guys, I'm Bardic. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time playing D&D, but you've spent 5 times more time talking, theorizing, debating about D&D. And in these conversations, whether they are with your friends or random people on subreddits, there's a lot of blanket statements about certain classes and how they're underpowered, designed poorly. I think these things get a crap on a lot more than they deserve, and in this series I'm going to show you why these classes have a lot more potential and power than people give them credit for. Who better to start with than everyone's favorite dead horse to beat, the 5e Ranger. Now, to fully understand the 5e Ranger and the core concept behind its design, we need to take a look at its full progression and go over some of the most commonly cited problems players have with its design. This is not a new player's guide or a slow you want to play video, so we won't go into depth on the basics or explanation. So if you're watching this, I imagine you're somewhat familiar with the Ranger. So first level, medium armor, shields, martial weapon proficiency, and 3 skill proficiencies from a decent sized list. Also, they gain 2 core abilities: favorite enemy, you're more knowledgeable about a particular kind of enemy type and can track them, and Natural Explorer, expertise when dealing with your favorite terrain, and ease of life changes for traveling in it. The elements a lot of DMs often already handwave when traveling or exploring. So where we get to our first problem of the Ranger. While these abilities are useful, literally every other class in the game gains some sort of ability at level 1 that allows them to set themselves apart in combat. Spellcasters, for instance, get unique lists and cantrips for one another. Some classes get their whole subclass at level 1. Barb's Rage, Rogue's Sneak Attack, the only other arguable one in closeness designed to the Ranger, the Paladin, but even they get lay on hands and have the potential to make people stop making death saves and get them awake up to 5 times at level 1. Problem is this: there is no way to distinguish a Ranger in combat from an NPC soldier or a thug who is wielding a martial weapon. No fighting style, particular ability, they are just a creature with a weapon. This hints at what is often the cause of confusion about this class. Its abilities are not solely designed to put its power in combat. Second level, fighting style. There's a very small list of available styles that suggest the Ranger should be a sword and board with duelist, a 2-weapon fighter, or a ranged fighter with archery. However, one of these styles is fundamentally flawed by the dissonance with its other level 2 class feature, spellcasting. Unlike the other martial class with inherent casting, the Paladin, they cannot use a holy symbol to remove the need for somatic components. Now, the Ranger does have a number of spells without somatic material components, but you're still incredibly limiting your combat options if you want to bring a shield into battle, because you won't have a hand to cast spells with. And the ability to do so is what makes the dueling fighting styles typically so strong. So typically then, Rangers are going to be going 2-weapon fighting or archery. Now, archery is fine, but Rangers being the one class designed with 2-weapon fighting in mind means they suffer at the fact that 2-weapon fighting is easily one of the most suboptimal and least fun combat choices in 5e. Requires heavily investment in a feat and a fighting style, along with having to find twice as many viable weapons, and is easily outclassed and damaged by most polearm or 2-handed builds. Not to mention, begins to eat the subject of our next feature, your bonus action economy. Now, the Ranger spell list is actually pretty interesting and diverse, providing a number of spells that will well synergize in combat by being bonus actions and give options and strategies for the fight. And you will ignore all these spells 90% of the time so you can cast Hunter's Mark. Now, don't get me wrong, Hunter's Mark is a fantastic spell. DPS, that is magical physical damage, and allows you to track creatures at any distance for an hour at first level. It's pretty great. However, it begins 2 of the biggest issues with the Ranger: bonus actions and concentration. We'll talk about bonus actions later when we discuss subclasses. However, concentration is a doozy. Now, the 54 spells on the Ranger spell list, 33 are concentration. Now, 61% is always a hefty amount of spells vying for your concentration, but it gets worse when you look at the bonus action spells. Of the 9 on the list, all 9 require concentration. These spells are meant to be your bread and butter during combat, allowing you to keep your action for attacking. However, you're unable to use many of the more unusual ones like Zephyr Strike, Guardian of Nature, or Hail of Thorns, because it's going to be less effective than simply keeping your Hunter's Markers up, and you don't want to waste the small amount of spell slots you have. This concentration issue only gets worse if you're a melee ranger who isn't going to be able to stay out of harm's way like a ranged combat style would, and is going to have to make concentration saving throws. Okay, those first 2 levels are a bit of a doozy, and a little thick, but it gets faster from here on out. Next up is Primeval Awareness at 3rd level. This is a bit, okay ability, very situational, but can be extremely useful for revealing disguised or hidden creatures. And one complaint is that while it would be overpowered if you could pinpoint their exact location, allowing the players to sort of just sense the direction would not have been so. You also get your subclass level 3, which we'll talk about in the next section. Following this, you'll get your ability score improvement at level 4 and extra attack level 5, standard for martials. Level 6, you get a new favorite terrain and enemy, making these class features more useful, and at this point in the campaign, you should have an idea of what terrains you're going to be exploring, so it's more useful. Level 7 is another subclass feature, level 8 is an ability score improvement, and Landstride, which lets you ignore non-magical difficult terrain and gives advantage on saves against very select spells. Again, like most things to the Ranger, very situational. On this we have level 9. I mean, I get getting another higher level of spell, but I do feel this could have given something here. And then level 10, and you get one of the strangest abilities for the class. Hide in plain sight. If you have a minute, you can give yourself a plus 10 to stealth if you stay in place. One of the few times you can give yourself a numeric bonus in 5e, and it stacks without pass without trace, so you can give yourself a potential plus 20 to stealth. Fantastic for ambushes, again situational. However, given that you can't do this for the rest of your party, it misses the mark a bit for me. But moving on, the next build of interest is going to be at level 14, Vanish. Now, while the fact it doesn't let you be tracked as neat, you've had pass without a trace since level 5, and that also applies to the rest of your party. And the other feature of this ability is the feature that rogues get at level 2, with their cunning action. And when you compare this ability to the fact at level 14 rogues get blind set, it feels a little underwhelming. However, 4 levels later, you get to meet the rogue as you get an effective blind sense at level 18, leaving us with only one more ability. Capstone Flow Slayer. A great name for a terrible ability. Once per turn, you can add your wisdom modifier, likely a +3 or +4, to an attack or damage. I don't really hold this one against the Ranger though. 5e has a lot of terrible capstones, and to be fair, that's also what makes people feel free to multi-class, so it's got a silver lining. So then looking at this progression, what are the problems that we see? A lack of strong identity in combat, unfocused abilities that don't help in combat, limited combat styles that are missing synergy, and being stuck using Hunter's Mark instead of a larger variety of spells. On abilities, I said it before, the Ranger is not solely designed for combat. D&D is meant to be formed from the 3 pillars or challenges of gameplay: social, combat, and exploration. Now, 5e has made it so a lot of these mechanics from previous editions around the social pillar are now gone, so any class can function well at the social pillar if they RP well, and a high charisma often isn't even required, even though a proficiency in a social ability helps. This is the issue though, the mechanics for exploration are still meant to be there, but so many DMs ignore a lot of the aspects of survival or exploration, and when you remove the area in which your class, the Ranger, has the ability to shine the most, of course it's going to feel lackluster. The Ranger's tracking, survival, and exploration abilities are unparalleled with their utility, and with natural explorer, primeval awareness, and hiding in plain sight, you should have the ability to outmaneuver and plan your enemies, tracking and ambushing them while staying one step ahead. But so many players and DMs just ignore this pillar, and the Ranger suffers for it. Now then, I'm not blind. I will admit that when you look at the base class features of a Ranger, it seems lackluster and underpowered. But a class isn't just its base class, and that's where we're going to get into the Ranger's saving grace: the subclasses, or conclaves. Each of the core classes have their own core identity or niche that they are the pinnacle of or excel in, and every class is then compared to this pinnacle. With martial classes, barbarians are the bar set for tanks, fighters are the bar set for consistent damage output, rogues are the bar for consistent single target, single attack damage, and a paladin's defensive abilities and burst damage is unparalleled. And monks, well, monks will be covered in another video, but these classes come with subclasses that allow them to thrive in their core identity in new ways or give them additional options within their core identity. They gain bonuses and additional options, but their tactics and purpose in combat does not change much based on their subclass. Discussing this because it's the crux of my core defense of the Ranger's potential. A Ranger's power and identity comes from their subclass. Now obviously the Ranger gains some power from outside their subclass, but with the exception of one very ugly elephant in the room, every Ranger subclass not only provides an entirely new style of gameplay / tactics for the Raiders, but it also gives a huge power boost. This is so often ignored by D&D personalities who only look at the class's main features and simply skim over the general idea of the subclass. While this function is fine for the Barbarian or Bard who still have a strong identity outside of their subclass, it screws over more subclass-oriented classes like the Sorcerer or Ranger. Enough beating around the bush, let's take a look at most of the Ranger subclasses we have available. Well, all of the official classes at least. The Drow Patrol moves through the tunnel with ease, led by their battle mage leader. Their superior dark vision making them alert to everything they see around them. Here at Twig Snap, Initiative's World. Enhanced Initiative, bonus action, the Hunter's Mark, and 3 arrows sail into the mage's chest, aimed to his knees bloodied, also in the first few seconds of combat. And the worst part is, none of the Drow have the slimmest idea where the arrows came from. So we have the Gloom Stalker, who at the start gains dark vision, a bonus to initiative, and can make an extra attack on the first round of combat. Okay. That's pretty great, especially with you likely being dex-based, you'll have one of the highest initiative bonuses in the game. And at 7th level, you gain proficiency in wisdom saves, making it so you have proficiency in the 2 most common or important saves in the game, wisdom and dex. At 11th level, you get an extra chance to hit with an attack if you miss, potentially giving you 4 dice rolls to get a hit if you have advantage. And finally, at 15th level, you gain the ability to impose disadvantage as a reaction. If you're going an archer and don't make opportunity attacks, this is a great defensive option. But wait, we skipped over one of the most important features, which you gain at 3rd level. Umbral Sight. While in the darkness, you are invisible to any creature that relies on dark vision to see you. At first glance, this is easy to look over, but fundamentally, it is insanely powerful. Permanent invisibility to any creature in the dark who relies on dark vision. These creatures and the many monsters you face will not be even able to locate the square you lie in. There's no concentration or time limit on this ability. Greater invisibility as a class feature cannot be discounted, especially when it cannot be dispelled. Once you reach higher levels where your party no longer needs to rely on a light source to see, either through obtaining items or class features, the Gloom Stalker becomes a truly powerful ambush warrior, choosing their fights when they can see in the dark of night, caves, or dungeons, where the enemy will never see them coming. The Gloom Stalker is the most deadly of ambushers. The Yuan-Ti constricts its snake-like body around the pesky archer, finally have reached it through its volleys. Victory is now assured as its brethren hurry to provide backup, but before the snake-like cork can even begin to think of its next move, it finds its coils empty and an arrow coming out from 10 feet ahead. Blinding pain as it hears similar cries from its approaching brethren, its vision clears and it sees the archer 70 feet away again, with an arrow knocked and ready to go. So we have the Horizon Walker. And I admit my bias, it's my personal favorite. You start with Detect Portal, good for RP purposes but rather boring, and Planar Warrior, which provides a nice damage boost that's force damage, so, impossible to negate almost. Next, at 7th level, you gain a bonus action Etherealness, increasing your mobility and making for some fast moving through walls and cover shenanigans. But finally, we get to the fun one. One of the most powerful features in the game at 11th level, Distant Strike. The ability to attack once more per turn, firing at multiple enemies. It's a good enough ability alone, but add to the ability is the fact you can teleport from 10 feet up to 3 times per turn as part of the attack action without using so much as 5 feet of movement or bonus action. The Horizon Walker becomes the hardest to pin down character in the game, and literally impossible to grapple or restrain consistently, turning it into a master skirmisher who excels at fighting when outnumbered and outmaneuvering their opponents. Then finally, you gain the ability to half the damage of an attack at level 15, assuring that when you are caught out, you can minimize the damage before teleporting away and continuing to skirmish. The Horizon Walker becomes the most deadly and slippery skirmisher. The Durgar squadron was late to the fight, but they saw how it was going. Their general dead on the floor and a bloodied hunter standing over him. He might be strong, but they had numbers on their side, and he was weakened. As they charged forward, they saw the archer, aimed not at them, but to the air. With unnatural speed, firing 3 arrows on every shot, he sends a volley into the air, and they watched in horror as each one of their comrades have an arrow go straight through their skulls. Numbers mean nothing to those who are prepared. The Hunter. Now, the Hunter is an interesting one. It gives you options upon each class feature, with some being fairly obviously stronger than the others, but all having some use in letting you prepare how you like. The first choice giving you some raw power for either single target or group encounters. The second choice giving you the chance to cover up for your weaknesses. If you have poor mobility, you get Escape the Horde. If you're a martial being nudged into more of a tanky role, multi-attack defense is one of the strongest buffs in the game due to bound accuracy, especially with monsters getting more and more attacks as you continue to level. It will only become more and more prevalent. And Steel Will. While a bit underpowered in comparison, it provides a much-needed crush to those who rolled poor mental stats for their character. The 11th and 15th levels continue the trend with the attack options, giving new AoE abilities, allowing the ranger to control the battlefield even more, and defensive options, allowing the ranger to assess their weaknesses and see where they need a boost. The Hunter subclass provides the option for an all-around solid ranger, boosting the offense and defensive levels in whichever way you choose, to let the ranger hunt how they like. As the name states, the Hunter is made to hunt. The Lich peers out at the party before him. Assessing the situation, he looks at the archer laying down support fire. He thinks, "Want to add some support to my own ranks here." He does not think to pay heed, the keen eyes marking him as prey as he casts Dominate Person on the ranger. He begins to finish the final hand gesture and cast a powerful spell, and then notices the arrow protruding from the center of his hand, causing searing pain and the spell to fizzle out into nothingness. Finally, we have the Monster Slayer, and this one lives up to its name. The capacity to hunt down and be undeterred by a single target is unmatched in this subclass. At 3rd level, you're gaining the linchpin of your subclass, Slayer's Prey. At this level, it is simply a small damage boost, but its value and power only grow with progression. You also gain the Hunter's Sense, giving you, as a player, an opportunity to plan ahead and figure out how to target a monster. At 7th level, you gain the ability to add a d6, average of 3.5, to your saving throws or escape grapple checks against your prey, continuing to make yourself an unstoppable and relentless hunter. Level 11, you gain a once per short rest counterspell that functions even better than the spell, as it requires a saving throw that the monster or mage will be unlikely to make unless they are wisdom-based classed and blocking even the most non-spell of teleportation abilities. Continue to make you an even more relentless and tenacious hunter. of which your prey cannot run away from. Finally, at 15th level, you get one of the best abilities of any subclass. The ability to succeed on a saving throw by succeeding on the attack roll. This functions almost as a legendary resistance on a reaction for yourself, because at high levels, with the bounded accuracy of 5e, you are much more likely to land an attack than succeed on an unexpected saving throw. With the lack of ability to run away or even defend themselves with spells, the Monster Hunter becomes a mage counter quite effectively. The Monster Slayer becomes a terrifying trapper and counter for the most elusive of enemies. As you can see, the Conclave that a ranger chooses doesn't just add flavor to the combat style, but each Conclave dramatically changes the recipe and how you play the ranger altogether and what strategies you may use. Many classes have a singular subclass that changes the playstyle of the class, the Hexblade, the War Mage, the Moon Druid, but Ranger is unique in that it is the only class where the abilities of almost every subclass are not really comparable with one another, and the fact it gets the majority of its power from such specialized subclasses is why people always underrate its capabilities. While I believe the Ranger gets crapped on much more than it deserves, I'm not going to lie, there are some clear and present issues with the class that if the designers put up variant options, is what needs to be fixed. First problem, limited effective fighting styles. This is easily fixed by adding some of the new UA fighting styles that have been introduced over time, giving more valid choices for the Ranger to take. The next major issue is something on the players. Rangers are designed for survival in games underutilized survival elements. The fix, make survival mechanics more sensual in modules and make the bonuses the Rangers get more effective mechanically in combat or utility. The next issue is the bonus action economy. Now personally, I don't think this is that major of an issue. It provides an interesting dynamic, forcing the Ranger to choose what they're going to do in combat, and I think interesting combat choices are what makes it fun. However, it does combine with the next major issue of the Ranger, concentration. You have so many interesting spells that you're going to ignore generally for Hunter's Mark. The solution for this is simple. If Hunter Marks is that core to Ranger's design, it should be a class feature, not a spell. Now these fixes, while nice for a quality of life change, aren't necessary, as the Ranger through their subclasses can provide a powerful and versatile warrior to the party. Except for one subclass I forgot to mention, the Beastmaster Ranger. Now this video is long enough, so I'll cover the Beastmaster in another video, but summary, the Beastmaster suffers from making the focus the companion, not the Ranger itself, and is easily the most underwhelming subclass in the game. And being one of the most iconic Ranger themes, its poor performance has dragged down the image of the Ranger. Long story short, Ranger is not bad. Beastmaster is bad. Now for those that don't know, much of what I've said here are the facts that Wizards of the Coast already knows. They've shown as much in their class features variants under Thakana, where they offered many alternative options for the Ranger, as well as 2 companions explicitly designed for the Beastmaster subtype. These changes do a lot to help the Ranger, adding new fighting styles, giving you the option to make Hunter's Mark a class feature, and making survival mechanics more useful. So if you are going to play Ranger in a game and don't know about these options, I highly recommend talking to your DM and both of you taking a look at them before building your character. Tasha's Cauldron is coming out soon at the time this video is posted, and hopefully the variant rules published for the Ranger will provide some much appreciated quality of life changes. I stand by my beliefs that the class is strong even before these changes. But I want to end this on a positive note, as this was meant to be a positive video. If you're willing to look past the negative stigma the Ranger gets, it is a beautiful class to play in 5e. It can result in a lot of fun, whether your playstyle aligns with the versatility and mixed tools of the Hunter, the highly mobile, liquid, and elusive Horizon Walker. Low-key one of the most fun subclasses I have ever had the pleasure of playing. The predatory ambush master that is the Gloom Stalker, even the single target neutralizing and countering juggernaut that is the Monster Slayer. No matter which of these you choose, you're going to have a great time. Just don't play Beastmaster. At least not for now. It is not fun. Anyway, thank y'all, and see you next time. This has been Bardic.